And I believe we are live. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Hope
Hi,
everyone is
hi.
doing. Hope everyone is doing okay. I think people are going to be joining as we proceed. But yeah, hello everyone. This is PM Therapy podcast, PM Therapy Live, and I have a very special guest today. One of our coaches, um, Bumi. Bumi is one of our really awesome superpower coaches. I'm gonna hand the floor over to her so that she can introduce herself. How are you doing, Bumi?
I'm very well, Mukta, and thanks for that, introduction. I'm very well, thank you.
Nice, nice. So, Bumi, for those that don't know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, so would you require the long version or the shorter version? Because I could do
Whichever one you
both.
feel like. Whichever one you feel like.
Okay, so we'll just keep things concise. Hi guys, my name is Bumi, and like Mukta said, I am a project management coach at WorkTips Pro, and I specialize in helping PMs. Right, that's like the core of my work. I basically help PMs, navigate the entire job search process. So we have a lot of people in the job search market right now who need help with moving from where they are to where they actually want to be. So we are talking resume revamps, we're talking interview preparations, we're talking even down to offer negotiation. And usually clients come back or come to me naturally when they are stuck or when they feel overwhelmed. And together we help them build a strategy that, helps them land their dream role. So far, we've seen an average income boost of 48,000, and we've been able to land over 20 dream jobs. And we've also had a time to offer rate of about 3 to 5, 3.5 months, which is actually really excellent. So for me, it's not just about, helping these people find jobs. It's basically about helping them find the right jobs and also helping them achieve that with confidence. So that's a little bit about me on the work front. And of course, when I am not helping excellent PMs like yourselves land jobs, you will naturally find me with my cute little one, just happily being a new mom.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Nice. Like congratulations on Bumi was on maternity leave and she just got back. So yeah, really excited to have her back. Awesome. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mukhtar. I'm also a PM career coach. I work with Bumi and we the same thing, like we help uh, people land PM roles. I really love teaching and coaching, which is why I do this. And also more importantly, um yeah, maybe this is a good time for me to go into why I do this, right? Because this is a question that comes up again and again. So when I there are two stories. Maybe I'll just start with one story. So I got laid off when I was in Dubai. I got laid off, and when I got laid off, like I had my wife, my daughter, and also my wife was pregnant then. So in Dubai, we were there because of my employment. So when I got laid off, like we had to leave the country right within 30 days. So we packed our things, moved to Canada. We didn't know anyone in Canada, so we had to start afresh. And yeah, so I was like building my network and just starting over, just really trying to find a job. And it was pretty insane because before coming to Canada, you have this impression that there are a lot of jobs waiting for you in Canada. Like the reason that Canada wants a lot of people is because um you know they need immigration to boost their labor force. But coming here, the reality was quite different. Like, I mean, you see doctors driving Ubers and very qualified people just, yeah, underemployed, right? So that was very eye-opening. And and it's not like what you're coming into this country without experience. Like, you're coming in, like, I have worked in the US, I've worked internationally, I've led teams, right? And then you're coming in, and even for roles that you are overqualified for, you're being rejected, right?
Yeah.
That was painful. So you're doing that at the same time. I have my pregnant wife. It is in the middle of the winter. Like I left the desert, like 40, almost 40 degrees, coming to sub-zero temperatures, getting used to that, getting used to the culture, no family, nothing, right? So that struggle was pretty real, and I was the only breadwinner for my family, right? So there's that additional um struggle, right? But yeah, so long story short, stumbling in the applying, messing up with interviews, you know um understanding how to communicate here, understanding how to position and package myself. So after going through all of that, I ended up landing two roles at the same time, right? But it took me some time. So this is one of the reasons why I do this, right? Because I like that struggle is real, like the anxiety, the tension, the and it affects everything. It affects your professional life, your family life, your confidence, and all of that. So that's one of the reasons why I do this. Maybe another time I'll tell the second story, right? But yeah, sorry, that's a long story short.
Yeah.
But that's a long way of introducing myself. Yeah. So my name is Mukhtar, and this is the reason why I do what I do. All right. So let's jump right in. Basically, this is an Ask Me Anything session. So if you have any questions, please just drop it in the chat, and we will get to it. All right. But before, people had left some questions for us, so we're gonna start going through those questions. But if you do have any questions, drop it in the chat. We're gonna give you priority. All right. So Bumi, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So one of the first questions here is, what is your biggest advice that you would give to your younger self, and by extension to early career PMs? You wanna go?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And the funny thing was that I actually didn't start off, as a project manager, right? I actually started off from, customer support to customer success, and then transitioned, into project management. So I feel like this is actually a question I can relate to. So one word I would actually say is start. Like, just start. For me, I feel like I spent so much time early on in my career trying to figure things out. I felt like I was trying to get validation from people, more or less, seeking their permission, asking questions, maybe if I was qualified enough to do this, or if I was experienced enough to do this, because I had a lot of people in my space then that were real, project management professionals, people that were like 10 years, 15 years. These were people that were sort of in my space, and I was, connected with them. So it felt like, oh, I'm just starting out. I'm like less than 6 months, in this space, and that actually delayed me for a very long time. So, like I said, if I was to give like an advice to my younger self, looking back now, I would say just start from where you are, start with what you have. You don't have to seek validation from anywhere. You are actually good enough as you are. And this actually, reminds me of a client that I had, when I started actively coaching people. So let's call let's call her Sarah, for example. I just have to keep her name anonymous, right? So Sarah was in this position where she kept doubting herself. She felt, really she hadn't really done, project management officially, like had that PM title. And project management was something she was, really, really passionate about. So we had to really deep dive into her experience. And after observing that she really didn't have like a formal PM title, we then realized that she had actually been functional in a lot of other roles that were more or less leadership roles. So she had led teams without that official PM title, and she had done a lot of other things that were really transferable skills, in the PM industries. So what we actually did was that we rewrote her resume, to reflect all of these skills, all of this expertise, and then we practiced interviews with her. So we had like mock interviews, almost every week. And then we tied her story, or we built her story around her leadership experience. So for each of her stories, we actually built it around her leadership experience, her leadership expertise. And long story short, at the end of the day, she was able to land a PM title. This was someone who was just officially going to land her first PM title. She didn't start with any official experience, but she was able to land a 42K salary increase from where she, was coming from. So, like I said, just start. You really don't have to own a title, to own the work you've already been doing. All of it, adds up. In my own situation, transitioning from customer support, I was already interfacing with people, down to customer success, down to PM. So looking back now, I would say just start.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And when you say no, thanks for sharing that. When you say just start, do you mean like proceed? If project management is something that you really want and you feel like you can do it, like start that journey in terms of becoming a project manager. Like start reaching out and applying. Is that what you mean? So just if you could clarify what you mean by just start. Yeah.
Yeah, so project management is something because you really have to, for me, I feel like passion has to do, with moving from where you are to where you really want to be. So
Hmm.
by starting, I mean, first of all, you have to decide that is something you actually want to do. Then next, you have to figure out what it takes. If you need to get mentors, if you need to get like a
Hmm.
career coach, that's something you can actually do. Then research, right? Because you can't just say, oh, I'm passionate about this thing, and then you really don't know what it entails, especially if you're just starting out early. A lot of people might be tempted to, want to get like a PMP certification. But from what I've seen, over the years, I've come to realize that your experience actually speaks first before certification,
Right.
right? So while certifications are good, I would say ensure you have like the relevant experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the traditional, PM. It doesn't have to be like a traditional PM title.
Hmm.
That's why you actually also need, guidance from someone who is actually experienced. So you're able to determine, okay, what skills do I have, that can be transferred into the PM space. So to
Yeah.
answer your question, starting means, doing the research. Starting means reaching out to people for support. Starting
Mm.
means, getting guidance, basically. And the topic about mentorship, that's like another word of its own. So most
Yeah.
people are like actively reaching out to people saying, oh, can you be my mentor? Can you be my mentor? It doesn't have to be all about you reaching out to ask someone to be your mentor. It could be that you've actually followed this person actively for a while. Maybe you've seen their projects, you've seen something that they're really passionate about, and then you're also contributing to it in a meaningful way, trying to have conversations with them, maybe scheduling chats with them, like coffee chats. So can I have, 10 to 15 minutes of your time? I heard this about you, or I did this little research about you. That person automatically feels like, oh, you really, know something about me. I feel
Yeah.
like I might want to have like a conversation with you. So that's, on the mentoring bit. I just need to touch on that a little. But then just
Yeah.
start. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's really awesome advice. Just start. I see lots of questions are rolling in, so I'm just gonna take them one by one in the order they appeared. So this is from Michael Aronson. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Good morning. I have a couple of questions. How do you handle ageism in the PM field, especially since RTO? And secondly, how does one overcome the current hiring process issues, including gaps and tenure bias? Gaps are not caused by my incompetence or misconduct, but by layoffs and economic conditions and company issues. Yeah, this is such a good question. There's so many good questions in there. Bumi, do you wanna take a stab at this, or do you want me to?
Okay, you can,
Yeah. Okay.
share your thoughts.
So
Yeah.
there's so many things here. So let's start with ageism. Ageism is one of it's real. I mean, I know maybe there's some people that might not want to admit that it exists. It's real. People might not necessarily decide at a conscious level, but it is there. It is all right. You see somebody with gray hair, and you start thinking, okay, is this person technical enough? Will this person be savvy? Right? Even even though, like, some of the savviest technical people that I've seen are like people that are seasoned. Um, one of my
Yeah.
mentors, the person who actually hired me when I first came to Canada, like um, he's like extremely technical. Like and not he didn't have not just depth, but he had breadth. Like whatever area, is it infrastructure, is it DevOps, is it like he was really an all rounder when it comes to and like every meeting just felt like a class with him, right? So like some of the most technical people that I've seen are people that are very seasoned, right? So ageism is a thing in our youth obsessed culture,
Mm.
but there are also many other biases as well. There is age bias on the reverse end, where people look at you like, okay, you look too young. There is gender bias, there is race bias, accent bias, and all of this. And what I normally say is the one thing about bias, the one thing to just cut through all the nonsense is relationships, is getting in front of people. If you're just a piece of paper, then yes, a lot of those biases will come out. So one of the ways to cut through all of that is through just real good strategic networking, right? And just to get tactical, one of the ways that you can network is to first identify your top 10 target companies. And and for this, I normally tell people, don't just identify like top 10 companies that everybody wants to get into. No, look and see the top 10 companies where you stand a good chance of getting into. So that's a combination of your motivation, like how much would you like to work in that company? Do they have open roles, or is there a potential that they will have open roles very soon? And it, do you have somebody on the inside, or is there a potential that you will be able to have somebody on the inside very soon? And the way to identify that is, okay, maybe are there people that went to the same school with me? Are there people that have things in common with me that I know that if I connect with them, there's a good chance that they would respond, right? So you just take all of this into consideration and you come up with your top 10. And then you now start to identify decision makers within each of those companies, and you start to reach out and have conversations, right? And when you do that, when people actually get to know the person, like that cuts through a lot of the biases, right? Because they say 60 to 80% of all jobs are filled by word of mouth, right? Like we don't see them online. So this will be um one advice that I would have to cut through like a lot of the biases. Yeah. I don't know, Bumi, do you have anything you want to add there?
Yeah, so I feel like I want to touch on the gap issue, right? Because we have a lot of people that reach out to say, "Oh, I've not been, in active work for 2 years or 3 years, so I'm really concerned. What if I'm being asked about that gap? How do I handle it?" So one thing I've come to realize over time is that recruiters are not really worried about the gap per se. They're actually much more concerned about uncertainty. So I feel like there's this fear of uncertainty, especially when people have been out of work for like a very long time. So in order to effectively bridge that gap and sort of drive that fear away, one thing I would say is you need to present yourself as a thought leader. And that's one of the reasons why we encourage people to sort of, stay active. Still touches on what you also said, Mukta, in terms of building visibility, right? So while you are currently out of work, how have you been building your thought leadership? You're in the PM space. What are you saying out there? What are you putting out there? What content are you putting out there on your LinkedIn profile or maybe on the other social media, handles? So recruiters actually go beyond the paper, beyond resumes. They are trying to see who this person is on other front. So if you just have your LinkedIn profile bare, and you expect the recruiter to just come over, see maybe your previous work experience or your banner or your profile picture, and if you, okay, I think this person is a good fit, that might not work. The job market right now is actually really, really competitive. So if you're in that space where you feel like you have gaps in your work experience, one of the ways that you can actually sort of overcome that gap when speaking to a recruiter is by talking about your thought leadership. So you've been actively posting on LinkedIn, you've been sharing topics or providing healthy content around the PM space. That's one thing you can actually do. Another thing is that you can also emphasize on how you've sort of stayed engaged, within that period of you being out of work. So were you taking certifications? Were you upskilling? Were you actively, doing some, maybe working on some voluntary assignments? And it could also be voluntary assignments that have transferable skills in the PM space. That's also another way to, sort of position yourself. So I just needed to sort of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Bumi. And it reminds me of this story. So we actually had somebody that we worked with in that actually had a very similar situation. So they had been out of the workforce, or the person had been out of the workforce for a year and a half, right? Because the person had to care for a sick family member, and the person was also a the person was also worried about ageism. The person was actually a granddad, right? So he came to us, and after like considering other kinds of help, he came to us, and we put together a strategy. Like, we laid the foundation, understood his experience, how do we best position him in this very competitive market. So it included how is he his resume, his LinkedIn profile, because 90% of recruiters will look you up on LinkedIn, right? Your resume is not enough, but your LinkedIn presence also matters. We also um, developed like a networking strategy to start reaching out to decision makers. And in a matter of 5 weeks, he landed something, and he landed something that was at the next level. So the difference in pay was about, I think, 60 to 70K from what he was making before the 1.5 year career gap, right? And this is one of my is one of my favorite stories, because like it almost, like, at the beginning it almost seems like, all right, this is gonna be tough, right? I'm a granddad, I've been out of the job market for a year and a half, like I have gray hair and all of that, and I want to be a technical program manager, right? It's almost like, okay, who's gonna hire me? So, and there's all these things that you have to deal with. Like, am I, capable? There's the confidence, there's the internal dialogue that you need to deal with, and then there is you showing up and hoping that the person is not going to bias, still having that conversation. But despite all of that, he was able to learn something. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought that this story just ties everything together that we mentioned, right?
Mhm.
Right. So thank you, Michael, for the question. Let's go on to, yeah. All right. This is not quite a question, but yeah, I just thought I should, because I'm from Texas Tech, and yeah, when I see Texas Tech, it just warms my heart. So thank you for mentioning that. You went to UT. Wow, we're rivals, so I don't know if I like you so much, Michael. I'm teasing. All right. Next question. What do you recommend for career growth roadmap from a traditional PM perspective? All right, I think I can take this. What do you recommend for career growth from a traditional PM perspective? So I don't know if there's anything like a traditional career these days, because I feel like job security is dead, right? Even if you get into, before, like, getting into a place like Google was like, all right, you're set for life. Now, not so much, right? So I think it, change is a given, right? But I think there is career security, right? So I think that how you position yourself, how you build your brand would would give you that security, and would ensure that opportunities actually come to you without you seeking opportunities. So what I would say is, maybe not look for a traditional route. Maybe look for, how can you build in public, how can you just build your authority. And I want to get really tactical here, because I think sometimes when we say things like, you know be present on LinkedIn, like, a lot of people recoil at that. Like, I don't want to be an influencer. um
Mhm.
and you don't necessarily, like, that's not necessarily what we are saying. I think what I'm saying, what what I think is useful is consistency, and just demonstrate what you already know, right? Because there are thousands, like, there was a role, somebody actually reached out to me about a particular role, and in a few days the person had received 1,000 applications, right? So and I bet you maybe 80 to 90% of those resumes have been finessed with ChatGPT. So everybody's boosting efficiencies, and everybody, like, so the resumes look very similar. So how do you stand out in that kind of environment, right? So I think one of the ways to stand out is by just having it's almost like your LinkedIn portfolio is a library and a portfolio of what you can do, right? It's like you're demonstrating what you can do, right? And one of the ways to do that is just, you know be consistent. Even if it's once in 2 weeks, you can just write about something that something that you've done, right? Or you can
Yeah.
take a particular, I don't know, a particular problem, or even just go look at what questions come out in interviews regularly, right? Just take one, break it down, like this is your, and when you have that, you're not going for virality, but what you want is that you're building your credibility, you're leaving this breadcrumbs of credibility, because when people that are going to hire you land on your profile is already going to be convincing them, right? Because a lot of times, like, what happens is that people get into the interview and they use the interview to do the heavy lifting, right? But your reputation should precede you, so that your resume, it's done some convincing, your LinkedIn profile has done some convincing, maybe a referral has done some convincing. So by the time you actually get through the door, it's almost like, all right, I just want to make sure that you're not gonna screw me over, right? It's like, okay, I just want to get to know you. That's all, right? And this happens a lot of times. Like one time, I remember I got into an interview, and the interviewer was like, all right, there were two interviewers. One of the interviewers said, okay, you know what? I've benefited from your content, so I'm not gonna ask you questions. I'm gonna shut my mouth and let the other person drive the interview, right? Things. I'm not saying that, again. I'm not saying become an influencer. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there are things that you can do, to make a case for your next opportunity, and that start by, just, it could be commenting, it could just be committing to regularly, posting content, even if it's once a week or once in 2 weeks, right? So just to go back to the question, I don't really know that there's a traditional roadmap, but I would just say, be open and build in public. I don't know if I answered the question, but I think that's a very, very tough question to answer. But I hope I did justice. I don't know, Bumi, do you have anything you want to say? Add?
I,
Yeah.
f- I feel like Mukta, you touched on the key points because one of the key things that we highlight is to increase your visibility, right? Because the job market right now is really, really competitive, like really competitive. And like you said, everyone seems to be going the same direction. But I feel like one area that really isn't, getting the traction that it should get is when it comes to visibility and really just putting yourself out there. So anything you can do to just really position yourself to stand out is what you should actually be thinking of. So like Mukta said, there is really no traditional career group map. So just position yourself to stand out. And Mukta has touched on the LinkedIn part, right? So if I'm to touch on the resume part, maybe we can see the traditional resume as being just loaded with the skill sets that you have. But one of the things that you can actually do to make even your resume stand out is by making it achievement focused, right? So you are not just telling. I love to put it this way: you're not just telling, you're actually showing. So you're not just saying, oh, I've been able to manage risk in the past. You are actually showing it by infusing metrics. So I've been able to manage risk, and this is what it resulted into at the end of the day. I've been able to manage this volume of budgets, and at the end of the day, this was the result. So these are things that I feel are not really getting the attention it should get in today's market. So little things like this, tend to contribute to the bigger picture. So that's what I would add, Mukhtar.
Thank you, Bumi. Thank you, Aman, for the question. All right, next, Summer. How are you doing, Summer? What advice would you give to an experienced certified PM coming from a background in urban planning who is new to data, AI, tech? industry and looking to grow and advance in this field. Okay. Um, yeah, so I think I think there are a few things here to consider. Is it that you've already transitioned into the tech field and the question is, how do I advance as a new person in the tech field, or how do I transition? Because I think that they're two separate things. But let me take the how do I transition first. So I think a lot of times the way I like to think about transition is, so there are several dimensions to transitioning, right? There is the role dimension, and then there is the industry dimension, right? So um you can transition from the role and the industry that you're in right now. You can transition to the same role and a different industry. You can also transition from the same role and industry that you're in right now to the same industry but a different role. The most difficult transition to do is when you have to transition along two dimensions at the same time. So you transition to a different role in a different industry. So I'll just give you some examples. So you're a teacher and you want to become a project management in the education field, right? So that is transitioning from the same industry but a different role, right? You're a teacher, you're a PM in the urban planning field, and then you want to transition to a PM in a tech field. So that same role but different industry. Now you're a teacher and you want to become a technical AI program manager. So that is different role, different industry. That is the most difficult transition, right? So a lot of times when people want to do that, I say, it's possible, but sometimes you want to do that in a couple of steps, right? So if you want to transition now from a PM in urban planning to a PM in tech, what you have to do is to now lean on what you already have, right? So you're a project manager, you lean on the PM skill sets, right? That will be very useful in tech, right? Cross-functional leadership, risk management, the ability to influence without authority, right? So those are things that you really need to highlight and emphasize when you position yourself, right? And I want you to think about this, that the hiring decision is a buying decision. I've said this before. Like at the end of the day, somebody has $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 that they want to spend to make a problem go away, right? And they're gonna spend that money on the person that can give them the most ROI, right? So when you think from that perspective, like you're putting the pain, the concern, the priorities of the other person at the forefront of your mind. You just position yourself that way to solve all of that, right? So I'm saying all of this, to say that the way you position yourself really matters, right? Because I was in oil and gas, and I wanted to get out of the oil and gas industry because I was tired of it, and I was like, it was stressing me out, and I wanted to get into healthcare because I don't know, maybe I felt like um yeah, I don't know. I can feel better about I was young then. I was like, okay, it's oil and gas. I don't know what it's doing for the environment. What's the best and maybe the opposite of oil and gas? So I said, okay, healthcare, right? Young and naive, but you get into healthcare and then you realize, all right, there are lots of problems in healthcare. And then I decided, okay, real estate. But anyway, I wanted to go from oil and gas to healthcare. And the way I did that transition is that I had this company that I was really targeting, and I just started to just soak up information on this company. Like I researched, I would um, I would consume, like use their products, even, well, not necessarily use their product, but read up on their products, look at product releases. When there was a conference with somebody from the company, I would attend the conference, right? Try to even meet the person. And then after I had soaked up a lot of all this information, I would be applying, but I was still not getting any any positive feedback. And then one thing happened was that I actually went for dinner at a friend's house, and after dinner was over, I saw this mug, and this mug actually had the name of the company that I really wanted to get into, right? And that just started the conversation like, hey, you actually know somebody that works in this company. I was, oh yeah, yeah, I know Anne. And then he introduced me to Anne, and then Anne messaged HR, and they looked at my application, and before you knew it, I got a call from HR, and that same week I got like 6 interviews, and then I was given an offer, right? Um, yeah, so it, I say this, to just go back to the point that I was, or the several points I was trying to make, is that, so first you need to first of all highlight and emphasize your transferable skills. So what I did is that, like, I just really played down all the petroleum engineering terms, right? And I emphasized what I could really bring to the table, like the transferable skills and all of that. On top of that, when I did my cover letter, like, it was very, like, the person that read my cover letter could tell that I was serious about this company. Like, I mentioned my knowledge of their products, what I had done, the people I had contacted, and then on top of that, I found somebody on the inside, right? So I think this is what would really help you make that transition. So it's emphasizing, just to summarize, it's emphasizing your transferable skills, de-emphasizing what would isolate, what would pigeonhole you in urban planning. The second is good proper networking, and the third is just really having some companies that you are interested in, and really focus on understanding and researching them. So that would be my take on this. Yeah. I Bumi, anything you want to add? I know we have many more questions that we want to get to. Anything you want to add, or should we move on to the next question?
Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
All right. Thank you very much, Summer. If we didn't answer your question, feel free to. I know there were, like, there are two parts to the question, but feel free to chime in again. All right. Hello, Fola. Fola, we need to get on a podcast together. I can relate to your story, and there's so many people. Yeah, for sure. That's the Canadian story, and I think even in many other places. All right, Ronald. I aim to be a project manager, and I'm doing my studies daily on strengthening my bandwidth of operations knowledge with my current project coordinator for the ad within my current project coordinator for the ad agency I currently work in. My question is, what would you advise for me advancing through operations department of the agency, or climb the project management ladder? Plenty of growth for me here at my current job, but operations is more hands-on and I enjoy both. Okay, let me read. Bumi, did you get that? I think I have to read that again.
Yeah, I'm just looking through again.
Okay, let me take it again. I aim to be a project manager. I'm doing my studies daily on strengthening my bandwidth of operations knowledge within my current project coordinator for the ad agency, and I currently working. Okay, so you are in the operation. You are a project coordinator in the operations space of your company. My question is, would you advise me to advance through operations? Okay, so continue through operations. There's more money there, or climb the project management ladder. Plenty of growth for me here, but operations is more hands-on. Okay, so that's in there, and I feel like I need more context here, because you're a project coordinator, and a project coordinator is, from a project coordinator you can become a project manager, right? But I guess for me, I would like to know, what is the other option from a project, if you were to stick to the operation space, from a project coordinator, what is next, right? If it's project manager within operations, right? So for me, I feel like, yeah, I need some clarity there. But I mean, depending on where you are with your career, I would say, if you're still early, like, you still have time. Like, I would even, like, encourage you to dabble, because I think that was also the pressure. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a son of immigrants. It's almost like, you have a few options. I'm paying international fees, so you better, like, make up your mind. Like what are you going to study? Don't tell me arts. Don't tell me you're passionate about, like, what are you have three choices. What are you going to study? And I need to start seeing return on my investment very soon, right? So I think there's a lot of pressure to, like, just feel like you figured it out, right? And especially when you're seeing your peers, like, they're sort of living the the prophecy, so to speak. They're living they're fulfilling, what your parents want them to. So I think there's a lot of pressure to figure it out early, but I would say it's difficult to figure things out just from introspection. Like, you need to
Mhm.
just dabble and do different things, and see where it takes you. Because operation and project management, there's a lot of overlap, like, in terms of, like, the skill set that you actually use, you know moving things from point A to point B, rallying, the team, problem solving, being able to prioritize. There will be things on fire. How do you prioritize? How do you lead without authority? So a lot of the skill sets that you're going to be using are very, very transferable, right? A lot of people that come to me, they're interested in project management or operation roles, right? So I don't really think that there is this chasm, you know between both. But yeah, it's difficult for me to give you specific advice without having more context. But that will be my take. Bumi, anything you want to add?
I totally agree with you, Mukta. I feel like project management operations, they share like the same border. And I think the only thing I would say is, even if you're not so much young, like, I would say, don't put yourself under pressure. It's just like you finding your purpose. It's not something that you can, decide in one go. You actually have to try things out to be able to decide if this works for you or not. So I would say, as long as you're currently somewhere where you feel like you have some form of stability or job security, I would say just keep trying things out, keep researching, keep networking. We can't overemphasize the importance of, networking. Network with people that are already in that space where you desire to be, and try to ask, questions. But yeah, if you're able to, provide additional context, you can always, shoot us a DM, and we'll be happy to, have, a deeper conversation with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he actually, wrong. I'm 41 and I work for an ad agency that does experiential advertising for Cadillac, and I'm project coordinator currently. Okay, so I guess I guess I'm still, So when you're a project coordinator, I guess I'm trying to understand what the next step is. Is it that the natural next step is operations? So, like, if from project coordinator, what's next? Like, what are the? I guess I'm trying to understand, what are the two? Are there two clear choices? Is it operations manager that's next for you, and then project management, and you're trying to decide? So I guess that's sort of what I'm trying to understand. So yeah, if you can provide more context, we can come back to that. Let me move on to the next question. All right. So this is from Michael again. I found PMP certification useful if you're doing IT type work, but on the financial and business side, PM roles do not require PMP certification. This is an age with AI and clear demarcation between business and IT side, agile versus waterfall at a late stage of the career. Is it really necessary with over 20 years of PM experience? Yeah, so I guess basically the question is the PMP really necessary, right? Especially when you have a lot of experience. um so my take on this is, even if you don't have a lot of experience, I don't think the PMP is necessary. And I know I can already hear the pitchforks, coming out right now. So I don't think the PMP is okay. Let me take a step back. A lot of people come to me and they ask, should I go get the PM? I can't get a job. Should I go get a PMP? And a lot of times, what is wrong is their job search strategy. Not that
Yeah.
it's not education, it's not certification, right? And the proof is that we've helped lots of people with our PMP get good, really good jobs. at a high level, without the PMP. At the end of the day, I'm going back to what I said. The hiring decision is a buying decision. If you can prove that you will bring the most return on investment for for that person, you will get the job, right? And the certification is a proxy for that. Like it's supposed, what the certification is trying to show is that okay, I can do the job, I'm experienced, but nothing beats showing that and actually just showing them you can actually do the job, right? And the certification helps, but there are other things that you can do. How do you position yourself in the interview? How have you built your credibility? um there's something else I was going to mention, but skipping my mind. But yeah, I would say that you don't necessarily need to have a PMP. It it doesn't hurt, right? So if you have the bandwidth to pursue your PMP, by all means do that. Like it doesn't hurt. And I think that even by doing the PMP, it really consolidates a lot of your knowledge and it even gives you confidence. So there are actually things that I learned while doing the PMP. Like, so it's like it helps you with best practice and all that, but I don't think it's necessary to land a job. And oftentimes what I see, because I've had a lot of people go get PMP and then come to me like, okay, I'm back where I started, help me get a job, right? So I don't think it's necessary. I think what you need to do is to really have a good strategy and show the person that you are going to be the best hire. Bumi, anything you want to add?
Well said, Mukhtar. I feel like you've touched on the key points. I feel like PMP is a good to have, but it's not necessarily a must have. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So thank you, Michael, for the question. Let's see. All right. So this is from Kevin. Just start, take up the journey. Yeah. Okay. That goes back to what Bumi said. Start, just start. You know, a lot of times you actually have more. I think we are our own worst critic, right? So a lot of times we actually doubt ourselves, but a lot of times you just need to be out there. Well, one thing I should mention, when I was looking to leave the oil and gas industry, I went to this healthcare conference. This was like one of the biggest healthcare conferences, and I met this person who is like a thought leader. Like he was doing the keynote speech, and after the keynote speech, people go talk to the speaker. So and he introduced me. He was like, "Oh, wow, okay, you know what? I actually know somebody who actually made the similar transition from oil and gas. The person was in Shell, and he went to healthcare, and he introduced me to that person. And this is just from a conversation, So yeah, you just need to start. And for me, I think where I was trying to get to with this is what that did is like that gave me confidence, right? Because number one, I'm seeing somebody who has like this person was maybe 25 years ahead of me, and this person is now looking at me and seeing me as a version of themselves 25 years ago. So like the advice that this person just poured to me was amazing, and I'm also feeling now confident in my decision that, oh, actually I can do this, right? So I think just get out there and just start talking to people. And what you would actually find, what you will see happen is that you will now embody the personality of the next person that you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just okay, I'm going to do my resume and then I'm going to present myself and I hope that they make that decision. You need to actually believe that where you are is like you're actually living that, right? Because nobody's born an ITPM, an AIPM. At some point, that they became that thing, right? And
Mhm.
oftentimes, you need to actually become that thing so that people can see you as that thing, and then they can now um make that decision, right? So, and I think that that's what happened with me as well. Like I became an insider, like I was now familiar with like what's going on in healthcare, and what are their top challenges. I was now using terms like, oh, the silver tsunami is coming and stuff like that, right? And now with ChatGPT, everything is easy to learn, right? So you just become
Yeah.
an insider, and it would help you with your confidence. It will help you with how you show up. People will perceive you as that, and then doors will open for you. Yeah. All right. I know we are over time. Maybe we can just take a few more questions. All right, there's this topic on AI. Oh my goodness, this is this what a topic. All right, where do you see the future of project management with AI? No pressure. Bumi, you want to take this? Oh, you want?
Absolutely no pressure. I mean, I feel like people should stop getting scared that AI, is going to take their job or whatnot. For me, I would say we should welcome AI, with open arms. AI is actually here to help us accelerate things, even make our jobs easier. So it really should be like our work pal, right? It really complements it. I use AI a lot, and I've seen how well or how fast I'm able to deliver things, better than, when I initially started. So absolutely no pressure, Mukta. I feel like AI is here to stay and there's really nothing we can do about it. So let's just go with the flow.
Yeah, yeah. No, we actually had a talk recently with Galen Lowe on AI and project management. Yeah, I think it's here to stay, and you've probably heard this before that it's the people. AI will only displace. I'm butchering this, but it's the people that know how to use AI that will stay, and it's the people that don't embrace AI that will be displaced. Yeah, that's there's a very succinct way that this is said. So I believe you get the point. Yeah, so I think just really lean into the technology. Um, yeah, I think that it's still a bit soon to tell how it's going to impact um, the craft, but I would say just what we're seeing right now, a lot of the boring, repetitive, dull tasks that we don't want to do, I think that those are good candidates for AI to take over, right? So if there are things that you're doing like that, they're not high value tasks. So what I would do is that I would ensure that number one, can AI do this for me, right? So that you are freed up to do other things. So that's one. Like, I mean, taking meeting notes. I just thought about that recently. I don't take meeting notes anymore, and AI does a good job. At first, before maybe a couple of years ago, like, okay, I mean, what are you saying? Like, yeah, we didn't quite say this in the meeting, but now, like, I feel very confident that my AI note taker really got nuances in the conversation. Sometimes, even things that are, it even extrapolates and like things that are, it reads between the lines sometimes. Right? So this is how good the technology is getting, right? So like that now. I mean, if a lot of the value that I was bringing was that I was always taking meeting notes, then like that's gone out the window, right? So what I would do is that I was really try to position myself. If you think about the 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 spectrum of skill sets for a PM, right? At the bottom is, just administrative, dull, and then at the top is strategic. Then I would lean more towards the top, right? Cross-functional leadership. How do I influence without authority? Maybe even learning the business, because I think that's also one thing that PMs miss. It's like if I'm in a particular business, at the end of the day, if you really want to hold people's attention, if you want to get people's attention, just talk money, right? If you want leaders to pay attention, oh, this project's on hold, okay, so that means that um this milestone is going to be delayed, and that means that we're not going to be able to hit our Q2 revenue goals. All of a sudden, you would see the director coming to knock on your door, the CEO will be coming to knock on your door. Okay, what do you need, right? So you need to understand the language of the business so you can understand um, how to wield influence, right? So that'll be what that will be my advice. So in terms of, to summarize, in terms of how would AI affect project management, I think it's still too soon to tell, but I think that it would take away a lot of the dull repetitive tasks that we don't like to do. So I would lean into more of the strategic tasks, right? All right. Let's see. Maybe we can do one more question before we. By the way, please, this is also a good forum to connect with people, right? Because as PMs, we don't necessarily, a lot of times, like the PM position can be a lonely position. So, feel free to connect with each other. in the comment section, right? Yeah, it's a good way to network, and you never know, right? Because also another thing about relationship, when you invest in relationships, the value of relationships appreciate over time, right? Because when I first came to Canada, I just wanted any job, right? And some of the connections that I formed then, um like now, a lot of those people have risen in their careers, right? So you never, I mean, I'm not saying that's the reason why you should connect with people, but a lot of times the connections that you form right now, they are the leaders of tomorrow. They're going to be the directors of tomorrow, the CEOs of tomorrow, and all of that, right? So please just connect, um connect. And I mean, you don't have to wait until tomorrow. There's also benefit in just exchanging notes, right now. So connect with people. So I think we should do one more question, if there is one more question. All right. So Abhishek says, I'm working as a lead in my team. I'm into IT development with 16 years of experience. How to position myself to the next level, technical manager, some practical tips. Yeah, so I think we've talked on. Oh, Bumi, do you want to take this? Or do you want me to go ahead?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Mukta.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
I think that we've touched on some of this as well. It's really about, so maybe one point that I can mention is, a lot of times you need to already be acting at that level for you to get that, that promotion. um and this is one thing that somebody had said to me before. It's like, there are some people that when they get promoted, it's almost like, oh, I didn't see that coming. Where did that come? And there's some other people that when they get promoted, it's like, okay, it makes sense. Like, how come this wasn't done sooner, right? So
Yeah.
um yeah, so I think one thing to consider is, for that next level that you're looking for, maybe you can go look at the job descriptions, like look at various technical managers across, different companies, and start to see where the gaps are and what can you start doing now in your current role, right? That could be one that you can do. Another thing is, can you start to network with people that are either in that role or maybe above that role that are going to hire, and start to build a relationship to get a feel as to what is expected of you, right? So that's another thing that you can do. And then the third thing that you can do is, like, now start to position yourself on LinkedIn as that role, right? If you're confident, like, I know I can do this role, I'm just waiting for I'm just waiting for somebody to vacate the position so that I can go in. If you know that you can do this, well, start to show publicly how how you're going to do this role. Like, you can start to demonstrate your knowledge. And one thing with demonstrating knowledge, it's not like the people that you see out there have two heads. A lot of times, for those people that you see that have established their credibility, is that they were consistent, right? So consistency leads to credibility. So you can start with, all right, I'm just gonna be, if it's once a week, twice a week, I'm gonna be putting out, like, content, just demonstrating what I know, or some things that I find interesting at work, and you just do that consistently. That will build your credibility over time. Another thing that I should mention is, because if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to create content, it's just a lot of pressure. One of the most underrated things is also commenting, just engaging in thoughtful conversations, right? And a lot of times, like, the comments, it gets a lot of views as well, especially, like, if you have a thoughtful comment, not just, hey, great post, thanks, but you have a thoughtful comment, a contribution, and then your headline, the first few characters of your headline is also very, very important, because when you leave a comment, what the first thing that somebody will see is your face, right? So you have a good profile photo, and then the next thing you're going to look at is your headline. If your headline says something that points to your next position, like, that is golden. I don't know, you can put technical manager something, or something that just speaks to your ability to perform at the next role, right? You fit that into the first, I don't know if it's 12, 13 characters and all of that. And then, people will now look at your thoughtful comment, right? And if you're doing this where that decision makers will look at, right? Because decision makers are on LinkedIn a lot of times. So you think about who's going to be your next, who's going to hire the technical manager, director, VP of engineering. Where are they? Who do they pay attention to on LinkedIn? Are they looking at some technical influencer? So you follow the same people and start leaving thoughtful comments. And then your face will be showing up again and again, that repetition with your headline saying that, okay, you can do the job, like that, consistent showing up again and again, it registers in the minds of decision makers. And then this is, one of the ways that your reputation can precede you, and it just makes, it opens doors for you. Yeah, this is real stuff. Like, this is something that has worked for me and for many people. All right, so we are over time, but this was. I wish we could keep on going. I had fun. Thank you so much for the questions. We didn't even get a chance to actually go through all the questions that we had that were submitted before, but this was fun. Thank you so much. And yeah, next week we're going to be having an interview with a guest from a really one of the very well-known companies, and he's a PM leader. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. So stay tuned. I think on Monday or Tuesday you would get um, the invitation. All right then. Yeah. Take care, everyone. See
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.